Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it is my first mock draft for the 2023-2024 NFL season. Technically, the last video of my NFL 2023 deep dive series. And I appreciate you guys being here. Hit the like, leave a comment in the comment section, subscribe if you haven't already. And like I said, this is in coordination with my deep dive series I did all summer, where I went through all 32 teams, ranked them from worst to first. And that is what dictated my draft order. Inevitably was my worst team that I had picked first and my best team picked last and everything in between. So if you missed any videos in that series, you can go check out your favorite team. There's going to be a playlist there. You can check it out on my channel. I did every team. Got a lot of haters, but got a lot of lovers too. So that's, it's great. And no trades or anything like that were made. I'm filming this right before Thursday Night Football, right before the season kicks off. So I don't know what time I was able to get this drop for. Hopefully it was a little bit before the game to sort of wet your whistle a little bit for what's to come with the Chiefs and the Lions kicking off the season. I think with the Kelsey injury and Chris Jones not playing, I think Detroit's got it. Tonight. This is gonna, and it's gonna throw my entire deep dive series record prediction aspect I did for the Chiefs and the Lions into complete disarray. So thank you for that. But yeah, go check out one of those videos and let's just get into this now. I'll have chapters there and you can run through it. I give some explanations and all that. So let's just get to it. So as always on this channel, we go 8x8, try to make it a little fancy, colorful experience for everybody who hasn't seen a mock draft that I did last year. We're going to go through some of the more obvious picks here, stay on obviously some guys longer than others. We'll start with Caleb Williams there at number 1 to Arizona. Now, what is Arizona going to do with Kyler Murray? There's talks that, him and Jonathan Gannon have a great relationship, and that could lead to him sticking around and this becoming a situation like we saw with the Chicago Bears last year. Now, I could buy into that. Especially if Caleb Williams is in a situation where he doesn't want to play in Arizona and kind of like Eli Manning makes it known he doesn't want to play there. That I think opens up for a team like Tampa Bay. I would say the Raiders and the Rams. Just looking at some of the teams here, I think would be the obvious ones. Maybe even the New England Patriots if they finish within a top 10 pick, and then sort of looking at what they would have to give up, though. The Bears and the Panthers really set the tone for what that would look like to move up from, 7, 8, 9 overall, 10th overall to number 1. So there's definite precedent there for some of those teams later in the top 10 to perhaps move up. But in this world, Kyler Murray's going to get traded. Will it be for a first-round pick? I don't know. I don't want to throw that out there, quite frankly, just because you never know based on his contract, based on his injury is what a team's going to be willing to give up for him. Could it be an Aaron Rodgers type of a deal where it's going to be a pick swap and all that kind of crap? Arizona does have 2 first-round picks, so there could be a situation where that happens. Yet to be seen. But as of now, I'd have Caleb Williams and Drake May really going number 1 and 2 to Arizona and Washington. If Washington does finish this low, it's going to be because of poor quarterback play. And they brought in Eric Bieniemy specifically, so I think that you can add Drake May in there. It's a quarterback that maybe Bieniemy has a word in. They would fire Ron Rivera in this situation. Do they just hand the keys over to Eric Bieniemy to lead them into the future? I think that could be a possibility. Tampa, it's really between Olu Fashanu and Marvin Harrison Jr. I got him going with Olu Fashanu just because I feel like they've entered a rebuilding stage at this point, if they're picking this high. So why not get somebody to bookend Tristan Wirfs with Olu Fashanu, and then you got 2 really great tackles, and then you can plug in a quarterback maybe later in the next year's draft. Maybe you find one in the second round, the way the team picking right after them, the Tennessee Titans did with Will Levis. You get Marvin Harrison Jr., kind of falls into your lap here, which is a tremendous for them. They get a true number 1 receiver. He mixes in there with DeAndre Hopkins, who I would assume would still be there next year. I think he signed a 2-year deal. And then Treylon Burks gets to play in the slot, sort of where he belongs. And I think that could be a really great receiving group. Whether they would keep Derrick Henry in this scenario, I'm not so sure. The Raiders, they're sort of just left there. Kool-Aid McKinstry. They need corner help, so I think that would be a pretty obvious pick for them. And then you get the run on edge players here. Jared Verse, first edge off the board to the Bears. The Bears don't have any real star-looking defensive ends as of right now. They invested on the interior defensive line in the draft. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how those day 2 and day 3 picks from last year's draft work out as starters. Travis Gibson, guys like, and Dominique Robinson seem to be the starting 2, but it's a very weak edge group for both of those teams. And I think the Rams then just take whoever the next best edge is off the board there. I think that depending on how they view the traits and stuff like that, I think you could see either one of these guys ranked number 1, number 2 edge. But I do think that the Rams take the top edge on the board unless they're trading up for a quarterback. And then the New England Patriots go with Emeka Egbuka. Again, whoever the number 2 receiver is, I think if the Patriots have that shot at him, that's who they're going to take. The weaponry in New England needs to drastically improve. They need to get some true top tier talent there. They're sort of just frolicking in this world of number 2 types, and I think they need to figure out a way to get some type of alpha male in there. And whether it's Egbuka or whether it's somebody else, I think that this is the direction as of right now that I would go. I think there's a lot of good reason to believe in these Ohio State wide receivers. It's going to become a receiver university to a degree. Now going to the next group, we got pick number 9, and it's going to be Kalen King, the cornerback, going to the Atlanta Falcons. It's an interesting group they have there. They traded for Jeff Okudah, but I don't know if they're going to re-sign him. So I think that they're sort of in that world where, you get a top-level defensive back to add to A.J. Terrell, one that for sure can go out there and be a great addition to this lineup. The Houston Texans, they just drafted C.J. Stroud. They just drafted Will Anderson. Why not go and get probably the best weapon on the board for your team, and that's Brock Bowers. You got some other interesting players out there at wide receiver with John Mechie and Tank Dell and Nico Collins. So Brock Bowers can come in, be a great tight end for you guys, and I think that is ideal for your situation with CJ Stroud. You want to get him a top-level weapon. Cooper DeJean, defensive back, Iowa. They play corner, play safety. I think the Colts are kind of starved at those positions. I think particularly at corner, I think you would draft Cooper DeJean to play him at the cornerback position. And then here's Arizona with their pick that they got in the Houston Texans trade. So that's Cleveland's pick there. Saw the Bears pick there at number 6 that they got from Carolina. This is the pick that they got in the trade back from this last draft with Houston when they trade up for Will Anderson. They take Jerzon Newton, interior defensive line. Illinois, just getting the best interior defensive lineman there. Probably the best defensive lineman left on the board at this moment for me. I like the fit for Newton. He's like 295. So he comes in, you had Zach Allen who left, who kind of looked like there in his contract year he was going to be able to replace J.J. Watt to a degree. And then he's gone in free agency. So now you get somebody in there now who I think can take over that mantle and be that guy that you can put anywhere in that interior and put him to work. Then the Packers, I'm taking Joe Alt, the offensive tackle out of Notre Dame. This is on the assumption that maybe, at least if it's not at some point this season before the trade deadline or at the end of the season, that David Bakhtiari might be done. The injuries, he's had a lot of them, some pretty big ones too. So why not, get a little younger here, even if he does want to come back next year and I don't know if he's under contract still, you trade him. I'm sure the Jets would love to have him for whatever reason. I don't know what that could be. Kalen Carson to Minnesota, cornerback. Again, it's another team that needs that cornerback help. They did get kind of light in the drawers there a bit there at the cornerback position out of nowhere after being pretty deep there for a while, throwing a lot of draft capital at it and some free agency capital as well. Then I got Quinn Ewers going to Seattle. Now, Seattle's in that weird spot where if they're picking in this situation, it means that they're not as good. They're about as good as probably people expected them to be last year, maybe a little bit better. I think people had at least a bottom 10 team last year. But if they're not making the playoffs, I know you have Geno Smith. Doesn't mean Geno Smith has to get benched, but it means you got to have some sort of contingency plan for Geno Smith. He's sort of under the same guise as what the Giants have with Daniel Jones, where it's like, yeah, we'll bring you in, we'll give you a nice contract, and we'll buy ourselves some time in case you are as good as we think you could be. And if you're not, we have an easy out. And I think that in this situation, it would be the easy out. The Bears picking again. This is their actual pick, and I'm taking Malik Neighbors, wide receiver LSU. Just get a playmaker out there for him. I'm not so sure about the Chase Claypool thing. I think Darnell Mooney's a free agent as well. So maybe you let Mooney go and you replace him here with a nice little fifth-year option contract for a receiver, and continue to build around Justin Fields, because that has to be the goal at this point. And I think if you play to this level, then investing in Justin Fields further is definitely the way to go. You're sort of out of reach here anyway if you're looking to move on from him. And here comes the next picks. The New Orleans Saints, Dallas Turner, edge rusher, Alabama. They were sort of in that situation where you felt they were going to go with a defensive lineman in the last draft. They didn't do that. They went with Brian Breezy. They took Isaiah Foskey, I think, in the second round as well. But they still need that defensive line help. Even with a guy even investing in Breezy and Foskey, I think continuing to add pieces there when you have, Peyton Turner, who, is he going to really work out and be that Cam Jordan replacement? And is Cam Jordan, how many years does he have left? He's sort of dropping off. I'm sort of looking at him the same way that I think that the Eagles are looking at Brandon Graham, where, yeah, we're willing to bring him back. I'm sure he's got some good years left in him, but we need contingency plans behind him to keep him as fresh as possible so he can still live up to the name value. And I think that a team like New Orleans could look at how a team like Philadelphia has handled the Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox situations in particular, and continue to build in that group. So you get nice, easy transitions. I think Dallas Turner could be a really good addition there. Then Pittsburgh, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., linebacker, Clemson. I just think Mike Tomlin would love to have this type of guy out there with that group that he has on the defense, continue to make the defense strong. And I think the second generation, you're going to get a guy who's going to be high character, who's got the right attitude, who's going to be teachable. I think Mike Tomlin would really love to have that. They got J.C. Latham, the tackle out of Alabama, going to the Chargers. He's going to play opposite of Rashawn Slater. So there's that. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You got Justin Herbert. You're going to pay him a lot of money. You got to protect him. Then the Giants, my New York Giants, I'm taking Leonard Taylor, the interior defensive lineman from Miami. This is a tough pick to make just because, I might have liked to go with Jeremiah Trotter, depending on if he was available. I probably would have gone with him because you don't know what Isaiah Simmons is going to break out to be. He's what's that going to look like? You got Bobby Okereke, but so where's the fit? So I looked at Leonard Taylor and I went, interior defensive line. They got, Dexter Lawrence there seems to be the guy that's going to be the mainstay, but they got a lot of money invested in Leonard Williams. They got maybe a little bit more money than they should invest in Ashawn Robinson right now. So maybe they can figure out a way to add to that group that they did throw some free agency money at this year and did throw some big contracts at the last couple of years. Hopefully get some stability in there. And I think Leonard Taylor could be a guy that could be a backup to Leonard Williams if you keep him, or could be a replacement for him either in the immediate or in the long term. Denver goes with Mason Smith. Again, just throwing stuff at the defensive line here. They did a good job of bringing in the offensive line help. The receiver room, I think, might be something that could be something they look for. But they did draft Marvin Mims. Jerry Jeudy's still there. Cortland Sutton's still there. That said they weren't going to trade those guys. Maybe they don't, especially if they make the playoffs or they get relatively close to it. Ravens, Kalen Bullock, safety USC. I think pairing up him with Kyle Hamilton long term is going to be would just be amazing. You saw some clips online of Kalen Bullock and the amount of distance he can cover as a safety to get from one side of the field to the other and attack the deep middle of the field. I think he could be a real threat there, and it allows them to move on from the bigger contract they gave Marcus Williams. You know these teams always like to move on from those bigger contracts and sort of get guys who they feel can maybe be as good of a contributor as the guy that they have on a big contract at some point in the middle of their rookie deal. And I think Kalen Bullock is a real candidate for that, especially in that culture. And with a guy like Kyle Hamilton, who can be a more closer to the line of scrimmage type of a player. The Lions, Denzel Burke, cornerback, they have no corners that I like. Not true. That's not true. I just thought that they would invest in cornerback in the draft. And they didn't. I thought that they needed to. And I think that we're going to see throughout the year if that was a wise decision or not. They did add Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Cam Sutton. But I think that they just need to get like a top-tier talent out there, like a young top-tier rookie talent, young talent out there as well. The Jaguars, Dominion Robinson, edge out of Penn State. Hints here and there that Josh Allen may not be long for this world. I don't know if he signed an extension or if they're going to sign an extension. I know they were talking last year like it looked like he wasn't coming back, and maybe Dominion Robinson and Trayvon Walker are the long-term answers at the edge position. And even if it's not getting a third edge guy in there, especially with Trayvon Walker, who might end up being like more of a 3-4 defensive end type, like you see with Eric Armstead, perhaps. That type of a player, there's a possibility that Trayvon Walker is that. Then you got a nice little group there. I think every team at this point needs, you need good corner. You need like 4 good corners. You need 3 good edge players. You need 3 or 4 receivers. I think that's sort of the pattern of the NFL these days. So this wouldn't surprise me even if they did keep Josh Allen. And I got the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going with Cooper Beebe, who is a tackle at Kansas State, but I think his future in the NFL is going to be at guard. And I think that he slides right into that guard position that Tyler Smith will be vacating when he eventually becomes the full-time left tackle. And Tyron Smith, I think Tyron Smith probably gets dealt at some point at the trade deadline, I would think, especially if they find some sort of replacement guy to play at that guard position for Tyler Smith, who currently occupies it. The Eagles, again, they're a tough team to pick for. So I looked at their wide receiver room, and I'm like, why not just take Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver out of Texas, and continue to add, another strength in a strength, kind of like the way that they do, draft years ahead of time. They only have Olu Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins as the other 2 receivers. They only kept 4 receivers on their 53-man roster. And I think that speaks to the lack of depth maybe that they felt that they had. Maybe it's the overabundance of depth they have at edge and defensive tackle, which I think at this time next year maybe won't be as high because, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, those guys, Derek Barnett, another one, those are guys that probably won't be on the roster next year unless they take, especially like a guy like Cox or Graham or whatever, who have to maybe take a lot less money. So I could see this being something where they put these 3 guys out there on the field for Jalen Hurts and hope that he continues to develop as a passer. The Jets, Amarius Mims, tackle out of Georgia. Their offensive line, you saw it in Hard Knocks, kind of makes me nervous a bit. So I think that Amarius Mims could be like the Darnell Wright of this draft, where you got guys like Fashanu, like Joe Alt, who sort of occupy that top level space. And then all of a sudden, like you start to see like the production, sort of under the radar production, like Darnell Wright had at Tennessee, and I think Amarius Mims could be a guy who could go much higher than this. Dolphins, Zach Zinter, tackle / guard, just a guy who can play on the offensive line, please. I think that's super important for Miami to have. Cameron Kinchen, safety out of Miami to Buffalo. They were able to bring back Hyde and Poyer, but I think it's fair to assume they're probably on the downside of their careers at this point, and you want to know when that age regression is going to kick in. Could really be at any time, so you want to be prepared for that. Bengals, I'm taking Roma Dunze for wide receiver from Washington. They're going to have to lose probably Tyler Boyd. what do you get in Andre Sovius? What do you got in Charlie Jones? If those guys don't really show anything, they weren't like big time draft capital or anything like that. If you can get Rome Odunze and just another investment in Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins already out there, what a group that would be. Then I got the Chiefs going with Jatavian Sanders, tight end at Texas. Now made this before Travis Kelce got hurt. So this is not like some knee-jerk reaction, no pun intended, to Travis Kelce's injury. I kind of played with the idea last year of them also taking a tight end late in the draft or late in the first round like this, just because of Kelce's age. You don't know when he's going to be done. And now I think even more so, you don't know if this is like these little like weird injuries are going to start to pop up just because he's been playing for so long. You might be beat up. I think Jatavian Sanders, even if he isn't that guy, having a second tight end there to sort of learn under Travis Kelce could be hugely advantageous. You got like one of the best, if not the best of all time, who is so in sync with one of the best quarterbacks of all time already in Patrick Mahomes. He's just been a juggernaut his 5 years in the league. I think that this could be extremely positive for the long term of this team, and you can potentially make a much smoother transition from a guy like Travis Kelce to another tight end than maybe people are expecting. You see other teams like the Patriots weren't able to do it with Gronk. The Falcons weren't really able to do it from Gonzalez to Hooper. So like this could be a real positive for them. And the Chiefs just will do this kind of stuff. I think a defensive tackle could also be in play. I don't know even if they do retain Chris Jones, but I didn't really see one that I particularly liked. And then the 49ers, Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. From my projection, they're going to need a tackle or at least some sort of offensive lineman. So whether Colton McKivitz has a good year and one of those two guards don't, you kick Colton McKivitz inside. I don't know, but I feel like sort of like the Miami Dolphins, I think the 49ers are in that same situation where you got to take an offensive lineman to just strengthen that group. And obviously, you do have Trent Williams, who is much older as well. So I think that investing in this position even maybe a year earlier than you feel like you need to, I think that's something the 49ers should definitely consider. And there it is, one full round, 32 picks, 32 teams, kind of, not really. Some teams pick twice. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope that, some comments in the comment section. Who did you see on there that maybe you didn't expect? Who did I have a little too high? Who did I have a little too low? Who should I consider for future mocks throughout the year? And again, if you missed any of the deep dive series, I'll put the video playlist on one side of my head. And then my number one team, the San Francisco 49ers, I'll put that video on the other side of my head for you guys to enjoy. And then you can go through, watch all of them. There was a lot of it, so you're probably not going to be able to do it all, but watch your favorite team. Watch some teams that maybe you are surprised by their ranking. And I appreciate you guys for coming, and I will see you guys with the next videos throughout the season. Football's back, baby.